So my name is Sam Shoge. I'm the Executive Director of the Kent County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm really excited to announce our newest series called Chamber Chat. We are going to take this opportunity to interview both public and private sector leaders on relevant topics that impact how business is done, not just here in Kent County, but the surrounding region and the state of Maryland as well. We are extremely pleased to be joined by Mr. Randall Dixon. Randall is the Associate Director of the Maryland Census, and he is charged with engaging the business and faith-based communities throughout the state to ensure that every Marylander is counted in the 2020 census. Prior to this, Randall has been the Executive Director of the Maryland Office of Small Business Regulatory Assistance and Governor Hogan's Senior Business Ombudsman. Before coming to government service, Randall was, and still is, a farmer, lawyer, and a businessman. He and his family own a 162-acre farm in Howard County that has a 70-acre solar complex. A passionate advocate for small business, he has served as an officer in the Howard County Chamber of Commerce for over 20 years. Randall has degrees from Cornell, Johns Hopkins, Indiana University School of Law, and Harvard Business School. His greatest accomplishment was getting his two very expensive children through Cornell during the Great Recession. Randall, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate the introduction. I'm really privileged to be able to address you all and the chamber membership. As you and I have spoken, I'm what my wife calls a chamber junkie, and she has for 20 years called herself a chamber widow. I believe in the power of chambers of commerce because they really are the lifeblood of Main Street, and they do things for the communities that they serve that no one else can do. And it's not just employment, it's not just economic development, it's all kinds of intangibles that really make a community vibrant and viable. So, and I know that Kent County, you all are doing great things there, and I'm really tickled to be here, to be honest with you. So
fantastic, Randall. Thank you. It's wonderful to be able to have a fellow chamber junkie on the line. And I'm glad you're able to realize the power of chambers, because you're absolutely right. We have this really unique ability to be a facilitator of both connections, information, and resources. And, that's one of the reasons why we brought you on the line today. And you are our first guest with our new series called Chamber Chat. So without further ado, I say we dive right into it. So we're going to be talking about all things census. So I guess, the first question naturally should be, what is the census? What process are we currently going through right now?
Well, the census is a once every 10-year enumeration of the composition of the United States, and it's nothing less than that. It is a picture of the United States in the year 2020. And it is of such significance that it was enumerated in Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. It was that important that it be constitutionally mandated, and I, as a sort of benchmark of the significance that the founding fathers considered the census, that the first census director was Thomas Jefferson in 1790. So he was a pretty important guy in 1790. So we can see how significant the census was to the founding fathers. And the concept of the census really goes back to ancient Rome, and all of us who went to Sunday school and had to sit through Sunday school with our parents know that in Book of Luke, the Bible talks about the census and Mary and Joseph going back to Jerusalem to Nazareth to be counted. So it is a baseline for providing information about how the country looks at any given time, and the consequence of how that looks really reverberates for every 10 years. We know that the census is critical for representation in Congress and on some level in the state. We all know that the census is a vehicle for the distribution of federal funds. Annually, $675 billion with a B of federal funds is distributed through the census, and the state of Maryland has in the year 2000, the state of Maryland was ranked. Let me see. I think the state of Maryland was ranked 15th in the country. And in 2010, we were ranked 11th in the country. Right now, we're, and correct me if I'm wrong, John. And by the way, I didn't introduce my colleague, John Watson. John is on the line, and John is our coordinator, our census coordinator. He handles all 24 jurisdictions. So, John, I don't know if you would want to just say hello during my narrative.
Yeah, just hello everybody. Nice to be on the call with you guys.
So thank you, John. So and so right now we're sitting 11th, just behind the state of Indiana, which is where I went to law school, and our goal is to get a complete census count and maximize that count.
So you said we're currently ranked 11th in the country. What is that ranking based on?
And based on right now the census is engaged in the self-response period. So the number of people who respond through either mail, internet, or telephone, those are the people that are currently counted in the self-response rate. And I should say, for the first time in history, the federal government has allowed people to respond in 3 different ways: through mail, through internet, and by telephone. So there's no reason not to fill out your census form. And the census governs distribution of funds for literally every kind of government service you can think of. Transportation, development of pre-K, Head Start, school lunch programs, SNAP, WIC, economic development, which is something that that we all are concerned about in Chambers. Literally any kind of distribution you can think of.
And so we'll get into the impact of the census in just a moment,
Sure.
but I do want to talk more specifically about what exactly the census is counting. We know it's an enumeration, and many of us know that it's counting people, but what type of people is the census counting? I know that earlier in the year, the issue of do we count undocumented people, or at least include that question on the census, was a really big political issue. So can you clarify what exactly or who exactly the census counts every 10 years?
Yes, Sam, and thank you for that question. The census counts everybody, every resident in the United States, citizens, non-citizens, legal immigrants, illegal immigrants, everyone. And it's critical to understand that, because when we think about the distribution of services in the United States, both citizens and non-citizens are are utilizing services. When we think about our communities, the resources that our communities have are dependent on the number of people in those communities, not necessarily based on their status. So, and the example and this is highly relevant to the times that we live in, Secretary McCord, our Secretary of Planning, always uses the example of vaccines. And he says that if you have 5,000 people in a town and you only have 4,999 vaccines, someone's going to be left out. And whether they're a citizen or not is not relevant to whether or not that person gets a vaccine. So we need to count everyone in the process because of the government services that are resourced through the counting of it.
So you count not only adults, but you count teenagers. You count the documented and the undocumented. I know that the census, after this initial period where you can respond either online or over the phone, they'll start sending people knocking on doors to get the information that they need. What about people who have no doors? And I'm talking about specifically the homeless. Are they counted in the census as well?
The homeless are counted as well. And the U.S. Census Department has a process for counting people in group quarters, people who are in homeless shelters, people who are literally on the streets. And so there is a whole separate division of the U.S. Census Bureau that is engaged in counting the homeless. And the point that you raise is that, you know, these people utilize resources and need resources. So we need to count everyone. You mentioned teenagers. Let's talk about children. Children are the most undercounted group in the census. And when we think about resources for children, we think about pre-K, Head Start, school lunches. Those children need to be counted. When we talk about college students, most people don't realize that college students are traditionally counted where they go to college, as opposed to where they live, because they're utilizing the resources of that community. And so that's, you know, it's where you live most of the time. And so that's you know, and seniors are undercounted as well. So everybody needs to be counted, particularly what we think of as vulnerable groups. As you rightly point out, the homeless, children under 5, senior citizens, ethnic minorities, and you know, groups that are marginalized in society.
So we are a college town. We are home to Washington College here in Chestertown. And you just mentioned how college students are counted where it is that they attend school. So based on the overall way the census counts those students, could you say that, say, college towns, for instance, could actually get maybe more money in their community? So if you have a relatively small municipality, but with a large number of students, that municipality could potentially benefit in a disproportionate way based off of the number of students that are currently in that particular area to be counted on the census. Am I kind of understanding that correctly?
That's correct. This has been dramatically altered, changed through COVID. And this is the first time that's happened, obviously. So that, you know, since 1920, we have to, and I hesitate to say definitively, but the last time I looked at this, which was about a month and a half ago, the census was using the guide that students should be counted where they live most of the time. And we all know that right now college students are all home. And so that really dramatically complicates matters. You know, and there's some students, as you probably know, that are still on campus. I know some students that are still on campus where I went to school, because essentially they're homeless, because they need to, you know, they don't have a home, so they're staying on campus. So that does complicate matters. So the benchmark is where students are living most of the time. And
so we talked about who exactly is counted in the census, and it's quite literally everybody. So moving on to you know, how it's tabulated every 10 years, you know, we're going through this very comprehensive process, but something that you can access either on the Census Bureau website or Wikipedia page when you are just getting general information about your hometown or your home county. They also have estimates during the years in between the 10-year period that they're doing the full census.
right.
How does the Census Bureau estimate? How do they deliver those estimations in between the 10-year cycles?
Yeah, good question, Sam. The Census Bureau conducts every few years what's called the American Community Survey. And it is obviously not a decennial survey. It's not the entire country, but it's sections of the country. And so they can get a sense of where people are in terms of the numbers, in terms of migration patterns within the country, and you know, economic development issues. There are also by the way, there are also business censuses during in between the decennial period, so that and I'm sure that, you know, your business, your businesses in Kent County get a census form every few years that is business related. So the American Community Survey is a process by which the Census Bureau keeps up with different parts of the country, and you can access all that information online. You know, and I should plug you know, the Maryland Census, just so your listeners know that, you know, we are the Maryland Census. We work with in tandem and cooperatively with the U.S. Census Bureau. They are our partners. We are their partners. And the Maryland Data Center is housed in the Maryland Department of Planning, and we have some very sophisticated tools to help Marylanders understand the census process and their numbers specifically. And in a little while, I'm going to ask John Watson, my colleague John Watson, to speak to that. But yeah, we are we're engaged with the U.S. Census, and the census is an ongoing process. People think it just shows up the year before the decennial year, and everybody gets busy. No. The U.S. Census, which is housed in the U.S. Department of Commerce, is engaged in census development and enumeration, collecting data all the time.
So that's actually a really good transition, because I want to talk about specifically the role that the Maryland Census and the Maryland Department of Planning is playing in this overall process. So what is your division and the Maryland Department of Planning as a whole, what are they responsible for in this current decennial process?
Yeah. We are responsible for census outreach. We're responsible for creating Maryland-specific tools for disseminating census information. We have information on Kent County, and which is on our website, so we're engaged in and we've been doing this, by the way, for 2 years now. This isn't our first rodeo. And so we have, as I said, we have the state data center. We have some of the best data people in the state who take the information that the census gives us and really drills down, literally to the zip code level and to the municipality level about what's going on in Maryland with respect to the census.
So you mentioned that you have information on Kent County in particular. I'm assuming as you're handling your outreach, you're kind of doing it on a county-by-county basis, and you might have some different strategies for said county. So your rural community outreach might look a little bit different than your suburb or your urban community outreach. Is that correct?
Absolutely. What the U.S. Census Bureau has recommended, and the policy that we have adopted, the practice that we have adopted, is in complete count committees. Every county in the state of Maryland, as well as Baltimore City, has a complete count committee. Kent County has a very active complete count committee, and that committee is comprised of citizens. It's comprised of community leaders, business leaders who are engaged in creating mechanisms for their constituencies to be able to reach out and mobilize, create awareness, and mobilize and engage every single person in Kent County. And as I said, John Watson, my colleague, has been very active in Kent County. Kent County, as I said, has a very good complete count committee. They have got boots on the ground. They're working hard. And I don't know, John, if this is the appropriate segue for you to say a couple of things about what's going on in Kent County.
Yeah, so as Randall said, the county has a complete count committee that was formed summer to fall of last year. So this is a process that the county itself has been working on now for quite a while. Also, as Randall said, COVID had really kind of had to make us think very creatively and differently about the kind of outreach that we could do. Initially the counties were planning a lot of events, a lot of gatherings, a lot of community outreach, door to door, getting together and partnering with faith communities, and just the business community, which we're talking about here. And a lot of that stuff obviously had to be scaled back or postponed. And then we had to really get creative and thinking outside of the box about how we could reach out to our community members. So, obviously a big focus on social media, a big focus on marketing with radio, television advertising. The way that we are able to also connect with the community, especially in a rural community like Kent County, is through food bank programs, school lunch programs. Very few things, especially during the peak of this, which was a lot of March and April. The only outreach really that was going on in a lot of these communities was the school lunch programs through the Board of Education, was food pantries through the Maryland Food Bank. Churches were also having food deliveries. So those were a lot of the outreach efforts that I was working on with the counties to try to get that census information out. Another challenge, obviously, for Kent County, as a lot of the rural counties, is Wi-Fi accessibility. It's fantastic and great that the Census Bureau did the first time in 2020 the online option. It's proven to be overall very successful. I think the Census Bureau feels good about it. But for people that have connectivity issues or just don't have the technology to be able to do an online option, we've really also, especially like in rural areas, we've really pushed the phone number. And we've also really wanted to encourage them also to look for the postcard mailers, the reminders in their mailboxes, and that they could also send back their self-response through the traditional paper method. So the Complete Count Committee in Kent County along with Chastity Durham, who is the Census Bureau's partnership specialist for that county, and myself. We've all been working together on different ways to outreach. Washington College also obviously an opportunity, and as Randall was speaking to, the college students, a lot of them did go home. We've been working on really trying to convey the message of the college student, unless they were going to be counted in a group quarter setting living on campus, if they were on off-campus housing, and they got mail, we wanted them to fill out that form in Kent County, because that's where the money, that's where the resources need to go. That's where they reside, as Randall said, most of the time. So a lot of unique challenges in different jurisdictions. COVID has made it challenging, but also, as we've said, Maryland currently ranks 11th. We're closing in on the top 10. It's been a great partnership with the Census Bureau and the state working together to really work on that outreach. And the good news is we have a couple more months before enumeration starts in August. So we really can try to get as much leverage as we can these next couple months to continue that messaging, to continue to speak the gospel of the census, so to speak, and make sure that every community knows that every person missed is worth that $18,250. And I'll share that number with everybody. So, and I was telling Randall this earlier, Kent County opportunity left on the table from 2010 was $3.47 million. So a lot of money in one of our smaller, more rural counties that, I'm sure the county could do a lot with. So almost $3.5 million.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was John Watson, Census Outreach Coordinator with the Maryland Department of Planning that we just heard from. John, I appreciate the additional perspective on the local front here. So with that being said, the overall impact that COVID-19 is having on your ability to reach out to the community and, convey the urgency and the importance of the census, how has that impacted the overall numbers that you're seeing, or at least the response rate, if you will, that you're seeing this year relative to what the overall response rate was 10 years ago when you last did the census?
So the state of Maryland in 2010 had a self-response rate of 69.5. And as Randall said, we were, in that top 15-20% in the country on that number. So far this year, we're at 64.9. So we are, 4.6 percentage points away from what we did in 2010. And overall, the nation, I think at 60.6. I think the Census Bureau feels good based on the circumstances that we've been working with about that number so far. Obviously, we're determined to count every single person out there. But, the numbers, I think with the online self-response option has certainly helped. This is just speculative on my part, but I don't think if we had that option in 2010 and we were living under the same conditions, I don't think we would have nearly seen such a great self-response. So it was great that the internet option was available for the first time. It really made it easy, convenient, safe for people to be able to self-respond, and that's in working with in conjunction, obviously, at the local level as well. For Kent County specifically, they are closing in on their 2010 self-response rate. They're currently at 56.3. And in 2010, Kent County was at 57.7. Again, that is just self-response percentage. That does not count enumeration, which will start. And Kent County finished 2010 at a 70% final response participation rate. So, it was one of the lower percentages in the state of Maryland. So a lot of opportunity in Kent County to reach out to everybody, to make sure every person is counted. And again, that $3.5 million directly corresponds to that 70% participation number that they wound up with in 2010. But to be closing in on what they did in 2010 on self-response, to only be 1.4% away, 2 months to go before enumeration starts is encouraging, and they can build upon this number. That will set the county up to definitely, hopefully, exceed what they did overall of that 70% in 2010.
Yeah.
So we had an overall response rate of 70% in 2010, which left about $3.47 million on the table. So that is money that we could have received if everybody was counted in the census. Is that correct?
You got it exactly correct.
Yeah.
So how do we know how many people were uncounted?
That's a great question, Sam, because a lot of people, they say, well, wait a minute, can't you just, if people are not responding, can't you just go ahead and count them anyway? And the answer to that is that there are several ways that the U.S. Census Bureau triangulates that information. It does not do that information when there's an undercount. There's an estimate about what the undercount is, and then the Bureau uses several tools, demographic tools, geographic tools, to figure out what the approximate undercount is. The problem is that if people are passive about it, if they're not engaged in their communities about getting everybody counted, technically the Census Bureau can't count those people. So you have to be actively engaged in the process. You have to actually, fill out your form. It's not just the number of people. It's all the demographic information. It's and again, and I'm going to speak to this in a few minutes. It's about income. It's about ethnicity. It's about educational background. It's about housing. It's about all kinds of things. So that is where the value of the information lies. It's not just counting the number of people and hoping you get the right ethnic groups right. It's about all the other information that goes unresponded to. And let me give you an example. If there is a need for example, French Creole speakers in the public school system, and you don't count the French Creole community, then that means that is underrepresented in the needs process as the distribution of federal funds is allocated. If there's special needs for Hispanic speakers in the school system, that's important. The police and firefighting services, need to know if there are foreign-born people in the community so that they can communicate with those people about public safety. Those kinds of issues are critical. So it's not enough to try to make the Census Bureau triangulate that information after the fact. So it's about every community getting involved. And again, since we're talking to the chamber, it's about getting the business community involved. And again, Sam, this is my passion. This is the thing I really care most about. It's about Main Street. It's not about Wall Street for me. It's about Main Street. The business community is absolutely critical in this process, particularly in smaller towns, because you all are, and again, as a chamber junkie, you all are the trusted voices in the community. The community doesn't necessarily trust politicians. They don't necessarily trust a whole bunch of other groups, but they do trust their small businesses because they're their neighbors, they're friends. These are people you meet in church, in a synagogue. These are people who run for local office. These are people that you literally encounter all the time. And so it's you're meeting your friends at the local grocery store, and it's all those sort of interactions that make a community so rich. But to finish the point that you're making, we need everyone engaged in the process so that all of the information can be captured.
So it is much more than, of course, just counting people. Let's actually talk about what information you are gathering in the census. And I also want to talk about why that information is important. We started at the top of the call, kind of talking about how the census data is used, but let's really bring that full fold into the conversation. So let's start with what exactly the census is gathering, the type of information, and then what is that demographic information then used for?
Yeah. Let me respond by saying at the outset that that personal information is not that information. People are worried about their privacy and responding to the census. And I tell people that you've shared far more information on social media than you ever could do with a piece of paper on the census. But what the census does is it collects demographic information, who you are, your ethnicity, and for the first time in the history of the census, you can self-identify. If you identify with a particular ethnic group or with another ethnic group, you can self-identify. It reflects your housing status, whether you're an owner or a renter or a student or you're homeless. It collects your income information, and it collects your educational level, background, whether you're college educated or you have a trade skills, whatever those might be. And it obviously it collects geographic information, where you are, and how your community looks. And again, let me emphasize that all this information is aggregated. No individual is being singled out. So it's all put together, it's all aggregated, and it is encrypted so that no one can access your personal information. No one, and this information is not shared with any other governmental agency. None. It can't be shared from the Commerce Department with the FBI, with immigration services, with anybody. And there is a 75-year moratorium on the information. So all of us will be, at least I will be, in another world by that time. And the individuals who are engaged in the U.S. Census Bureau swear an oath to keep this information confidential for their lifetimes. And if they violate the oath, they're subject to a fine up to $250,000 and 5 years in jail. So there's a pretty strong prohibition against sharing information. So
what you're saying is my name, my address, where I live, social security information, things like that, where you can drill down and identify me in particular, that is not shared with any other person, really. All that information is just aggregated. So you can identify aggregated information down to the zip code, but not necessarily down to the specific household where somebody's living. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. That's correct. So, so people should have, and I know that there's been a lot of talk about this. We all understand that. We understand that there's been some controversy about this, but people need to be reassured that they won't run into any issues subsequent to filling out their census form.
So you've gathered all of this information. What do we do with it afterwards?
Well, Sam, let me use that question as a segue since we're talking about business. I am passionate about a tool that's used by that the Census Bureau has, and it's virtually unknown. I've talked to a lot of business groups. I've talked to a lot of business owners. I've talked to a lot of chamber executives over the last year, and I'm astonished that people don't know about this very simple tool, and it's called the U.S. Census Business Builder. Now, we know, and the example I always use is whenever you see a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks, they have used the Business Builder. And what the Business Builder does is it provides both demographic and geographic information to businesses about how to locate their business, how to staff their business, how to find customers for their business, and how to segment their business so that they can market their business. And it's an amazing tool. And we all know that big businesses use these things all the time. They hire high-end consulting services and to find both demographic and geographic information about customers, competitors, and employees. And the big guys use it all the time. But the smallest businesses, barbershops, hair salons, bakeries, restaurants can use this tool as well. It's called the Business Builder. There are two versions of the Business Builder. One is a small business builder, so it's intended for most of your constituents in the chamber. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd say about 80% of your constituents in the chamber are small businesses, 25 employees or less, and they are trying to do several things. They're trying to identify customers. They're trying to get their workforce to work every day, and so they can service their customers. And I can tell you, as an employer, finding employees is every bit as hard as finding customers. You've got to work hard to find employees, and you've got to train those employees. And in a college town, you're probably going to lose a lot of those employees. They're going to go somewhere else, and so you're spending a lot of your time and money in doing the training process so that your customers can be serviced effectively. So, and then there's another a version of the Business Builder, which is a regional version, where you can add multiple counties into the Business Builder so you can build out your business plan. And that's also used for chambers. Chambers use the regional Business Builder. Nonprofits use the Business Builder. It's a very effective tool. And the beauty of it is it gives you reports. You can put in your own individual preferences from the Business Builder, and it'll generate reports for you. So if you're developing a new business plan, if you need if you're looking to expand your business, you're looking for some equipment leasing, you're looking for working capital, and you need to go to a bank, well, you don't have to guess. You don't have to sort of figure it out on the fly. You can go to the Business Builder. You can input your own data, and it will actually generate a report just for you. And if you ever want to convince a banker that you know your business down to the last, if you're a restaurant, down to the last salt shaker, down if you're a barbershop, down to the last hair clipper, then show them that you understand your market. And it's a tremendous tool. It's a tremendous tool for a lot of people, and it's free. It's absolutely free. So by using that example, I've shown you how a small business can access the kinds of information, as I said, ethnic information, income information, housing information, getting a real look for the composition of your business, and seeing how your business looks and how it can compete, because you can compete, not just countywide, but you can compete throughout the whole region. You can look at the entire Eastern Shore and say, okay, well, I've got I run a bakery, and I want to do high-end baked goods. So where is where are the college kids going to go in order to get those the high-end truffles and that sort of thing? Well, that's the way to do it is through the census, which is why we're trying to encourage businesses to engage in the census. It's good for them. It's good for business. but it's also good for their communities.
So the more that our businesses can engage their employees, customers, etc., to fill out the census, all that does for them is it gives them an even more complete picture of their community and their overall customer profile and the demographic information that they need to either identify a second location to open up shop, or, help them decide whether or not, should I expand my current operation, et cetera, et cetera. You're saying all that information that we gather from the census is then compiled into this tool that businesses can leverage for free. Where do they go to start using that tool?
Yeah, you can go to census.gov/data/data tools/CBB, which is Census Business Builder .html, and so that's the way to get to the Business Builder. I need to plug our website, which is census.maryland.gov, and it has all kinds of incredible information there. We have a census toolkit that I encourage everyone to look at, and they can. And I know you're going to share my information. Please have your constituents email me. I can send them information. I can send them the links. We want to share we have an incredible array of tools that businesses can use to get the word out, to talk to their employees, talk to their customers, talk to their stakeholders, and help them.
So you mentioned earlier that in addition to, of course, this Business Builder, I mean, there's a myriad number of ways that the census impacts people's everyday life, and it helps with the distribution of $675 billion in federal monies to all of our jurisdictions. But you also said something about the COVID-19 crisis in particular, and how census data actually determines how many vaccines get distributed to local communities.
Right.
That
yes.
seems, that is coincidentally enough, it is perfectly, relevant to the current crisis that we're experiencing in this global pandemic. So, I think that is if you were to make one argument about why the census matters, that is it.
Yeah.
What do people say when you share this information with them? Because I am trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's just really busy, and the census takes too long to fill out. It's really not that important to me, until you make this very compelling argument. What are people's general reactions when, you say, well, this determines how many vaccines get distributed to the community? What's the reaction like?
Yeah, Sam. I'm fond of saying, and everyone in the office has heard me say it at least 20 times, that everyone's tuned into a radio station. It's WII-FM. What's in it for me? And when you talk in the abstract in the community about how important the census is and how it provides roads and school funding and and WIC and SNAP and all those other things, people say, oh yeah, okay. But when you say, well, when a vaccine is actually created, it's going to be distributed on the basis of census data. That gets people's attention in these very difficult times. And the irony is that Secretary McCord has been using the vaccine analogy for 2 years now. And now it's real. It's not just a metaphor. It's real. And so it is incredibly important for and I think that one of the reasons that we've had a lot of success in Maryland in this administration in combating and dealing with the COVID crisis has been because we had good information, we had good data, and we saw how the administration was able to mobilize the resources that the state had. And if you look at several other states, they didn't do such a good job. But Maryland, in my humble view, has done an exemplary job in keeping Marylanders safe. So, and a lot of that is census driven.
Phenomenal. It really is a wide and far-reaching implications that we're dealing with when it comes to ensuring that every person within our community is counted. So I want to start wrapping up the conversation, and the next question that I have is just it has to do with timing. How much more time do we have to fill out the census online? After that time period is up, what comes next? John mentioned that the enumerations process starts and people will start going door to door. That's likely going to take place in August. And then how long will that process go? So walk me through the timeline of how much longer do we have to ensure that we are counted?
Yes, because of COVID, the self-response window has been extended from when it started in March 12th, but it's been extended to October 31st. So we have an extra 3 months, August, September, and October, to finish the self-response period. So we have more to do. We in the Department of Planning have more to do, but this gives us the time that we need in order to completely get the word out. After October 31st, the U.S. Census enumerators will start knocking on doors. So and we're hoping that Maryland will have blown our numbers out by then. We'll be far beyond where we were in 2010, and that will essentially be a mop-up operation for the U.S. Census. And historically the census report goes to the president's desk on December 1st, and in this particular census, that's going to be pushed out beyond December, and I think it's January 30th. John, do you have an endpoint number for that? I confess I don't know what when the new report is to go to the president's desk.
I don't remember that off the top of my head either, but I can get that.
Okay. Yeah. And so, but the important thing is not to politicize this. This is a bipartisan effort on behalf of the Hogan administration and legislatures. Legislators have been very active and very engaged because they recognize this is a bipartisan, nonpartisan effort, and we need everybody engaged in that effort. And Sam, let me usurp you for a second and just say that I want to see to it that businesses find an easy way to engage. What we would like is for businesses we have a complete toolkit online, and what we would like to do is get your constituents to download our Maryland 2020 Census logo, to distribute information both online and in their points of contact, points of sale, in their businesses. We have all kinds of resources, both online and otherwise, to engage your constituents and get the businesses involved. When businesses get involved, whole communities get involved. It's very, very important. And as we can see from King County, we lost almost $3.5 million from the last go round. we need businesses involved.
Excellent.
April
Thank you.
30th will now be.
April 30th. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. So we have been joined by Randall Nixon, the Associate Director of Maryland Census, and John Watson, the Census Outreach Coordinator with the Maryland Department of Planning. I want to thank you both for joining us today to talk all things census. We do have one caller on the line. I want to extend the offer to ask any particular questions to Mr. Randall or John. Are there any questions from the audience? Okay. Hearing none. Randall, John, thank you again for joining us. Do you have any last points or any last words?
My census.maryland.gov. You can reach me by phone or by email. If there are any questions, if there's any opportunity, I'm willing to talk to anybody about census. I am 100% census 100% of the time, at least until the end of the year.
Randall, thank you. John, do you have any last comments?
No, just thank you for the time. Thank you for allowing us to join and to spread some good dialogue and messaging out there to the community. And we appreciate anything and everything you guys can do in Kent County to ensure an accurate and complete count. And reach out if you need anything or have any questions.
We will absolutely support you in the best of our abilities. We need to find a way to get that lost $3.5 million, so consider us on it. So thank you again, Randall and John, and thank you to the callers who dialed in to listen. You have been listening to Chamber Chat, a new series from the Kent County Chamber of Commerce. You all have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sam.